if the current discourse in America focuses on upliftment and personal responsibility, I will tell you that successive generations of black people will become richer and richer and richer, despite whatever challenges are there. But when the discourse is the system is trying to hold you back, the system is discriminating against you, it does something negative to the black psyche, and it kind of just puts a ceiling to the minds of some people, or some black people who have believed that narrative that no matter how much we try, we may not be able to rise above this condition, which is not true. Hey there, welcome to Critical African Thinkers. This is a place where nothing escapes scrutiny. Here we examine everything to ascertain that which is most factual and logically consistent. So today I'm going to be continuing my critique of Robin DiAngelo's book, White Fragility, and I'll be doing a critique of the first chapter of her book. I'll just read some of the points that she made in the book and trying to give my thoughts on them. So the first thing I would like to react to is, she said, however, like most white people raised in the US, I was not taught to see myself in racial terms, and certainly not to draw attention to my race or to behave as if it mattered in any way. Of course, I was made aware that someone else's race mattered, and if race was discussed, it would be theirs, not mine. Now, I agree 100% with this statement of DiAngelo. I believe it to be a reflection of the true perspective, a true reflection of the perspective of a white person as regards race in America. Now, it would have been a much more admirable thing if less emphasis is placed on other people's race, as little of an emphasis has been placed on the white race currently. So where I diverge with where I disagree with DiAngelo is that she wants race to be much more white people to be much more conscious of the race and its associated privileges. But I would like to take that white position and move it further. I mean, if white people, their race is being de-emphasized in their day-to-day lives, so in their day-to-day activities, I believe that other races should also de-emphasize their race in their day-to-day activities. And little attention should be drawn to race unless it is absolutely necessary. So rather than have a society that is racially focused, other parameters should be much more important in addressing issues in America. And I also believe that there would be an incredible improvement in race relations in America if little emphasis is placed on race, which, by the way, is only skin deep. DiAngelo further said, individualism is a storyline that creates, communicates, reproduces, and reinforces the concept that each of us is a unique individual, and that our group memberships, such as race, class, or gender, are irrelevant to our opportunities. She argues that the doctrine of individualism makes light of the fact that there is an uneven distribution of access to opportunities across racial lines. Now, I believe this to be sort of a narrow definition of individualism, because it's not as if individual efforts are the sole contributing factor to the success of any individual, of any person in any society, but it is a much more important contributing factor to the success of a person, such that a black person who is determined to make their way in life despite the inequities that are present would be much more successful than a mediocre white person who has some of the privilege or all the privileges available to white people. So in this case, individualism is important, even though it is not the only factor, but I think it's much more important than racial advantages or racial disadvantages in determining the outcome of any individual in a society. I mean, if there are inequities to employment, to access to education, to healthcare, these are policy issues that should be fixed. These are policy issues that should be taken care of at the appropriate quarters. An example, suppose Obama did not try to become president. Suppose he said, there are too many injustices against black people in America. The hurdles are just too much. I don't see a way for me to become president. And he just stayed back and never even tried to become president. I doubt if America would have had its first black president ever. So the point I'm trying to make is that white privilege, or whatever disadvantage that black people are facing in America, is not enough to hold back a truly determined black person in America, because I believe that there are a lot of opportunities that are open to people of any race at all, serious-minded people of any race. Now, this is not discounting that there are some disadvantages. I would concede that, but those disadvantages, to me, I think they play very, very little factor in the outcomes of people. If the current discourse in America focuses on upliftment and personal responsibility, I will tell you that successive generations of black people will become richer and richer and richer, despite whatever challenges are there. But when the discourse is the system is trying to hold you back, the system is discriminating against you, it does something negative to the black psyche, and it kind of just puts a ceiling to the minds of some people, or some black people who have believed that narrative that no matter how much we try, we may not be able to rise above this condition, which is not true. And I find it to be incredibly narcissistic that one could socially engineer equal racial outcomes, because no matter how much you try to do that, people are still individuals. They're still going to make choices, and these choices are still going to have consequences. I'm not saying the consequences are going to be bad for one group and better for the other group, but that is what it is. And this idea of trying to socially engineer social outcomes, it's a messiah complex for white people, and it sort of infantilizes black people, that without the help of the white people, black people cannot rise above a certain level, which is so not true. Even on YouTube, I've seen a lot of successful black people, and when these people speak, I can see that most of their success is derived from their personal efforts, and they've never at one point or at any point mentioned some of these systemic issues that were holding them back. They said this was what they did, and it gave them results, despite the fact that they were black. So what are those specific challenges that would hold back a serious-minded black person in America? If there are policy issues, like I said earlier, if there are discriminatory policies, those they can easily be dealt with. If there are attitudes of people, then that is just individual racism. It's just individual discrimination. And I think that racism right now in America, there's a huge price to be paid for anyone who wants to be racist in America. If you're going to discriminate against someone in America currently as a white person, there's a huge price to pay. So a lot of white people would be very, very conscious of what they're doing. If the racism is such that it is just a benign form of the person's attitude that really has nothing to do with impacting the progress of black people, then I don't think that's a problem, because you cannot really change what a person thinks or feels towards you if they're not able to act in a manner detrimental towards you, because they're going to be punished by the system. Yes, any white person who's openly racist in America today is going to be punished. Some may lose their jobs. There are all sorts of social consequences for being racist in America today. So diangelo says, regardless of our protestations that social groups don't matter and that we see everyone as equal, we know that to be a man as defined by the dominant culture is a different experience from being a woman. We know that to be viewed as old is different from being viewed as young. Rich is different from poor. Able-bodied different from having a disability. Gay from homosexual, and so on. These groups matter, but they don't matter naturally, as we are often taught to believe. I don't see the point she's trying to drive at here. Of course, there are differences in being a man and being a woman. Of course, there are differences between being young and being old. Of course, there are differences between being straight and being gay. Of course, there are all sorts of differences, and with each peculiar characteristics, there comes certain advantages or certain disadvantages. But we cannot conflate race with all these other characteristics. It is disingenuous for you to now conflate race with these other kinds of groupings, because if you are saying there's a difference between young and old and the way they are being treated in society, who is the young? The white people? Does that mean they are treated better? And the black people are the old? Does that mean they are treated worse? Who is the rich? The white people means they are treated better. The poor, the black people, means they are treated worse. So, trying to use this as an example of how races are being treated differently in America, it doesn't work for me. It doesn't work because those other categories, those other groups, they have their own specific features. Now, I would say this, that D'Angelo continues to unashamedly define racism in a very broad manner as to encompass so many things that no white person will ever escape the charge of racism. But I will continue to maintain that racism has to be very specific, it has to be individual, it has to be willful, and there has to be a mind behind it. It is such that someone intentionally discriminates against another person solely on the basis of the color of the skin, of their racial or ethnic identity. That is, to me, that's the only definition of racism that I'm willing to accept. So in this first chapter that Robin DiAngelo puts forward, these points that I have noted, those are my thoughts on them. I think that she has some very, very useful insights, but the conclusions that she draws from them is where I have a problem. For example, when she says that white people are taught to not be racially conscious, especially of their own race, but to be racially conscious of other people's race, I think that is correct. But I think that also, where I disagree with her is that I do not want white people to become more racially conscious. Rather, I want other people to become less racially conscious, such that you have a society that is based on other things rather than on race. So that's what I think about the chapter 1 of Robin DiAngelo's White Fragility. Tell me what you think in the comment section below. Do not forget to like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, remain awesome.